Hi, everyone. My name is Kate. I'm a creativity coach coming to you from Sandmere Studio. Today, we're going to do something new. Um, I thought it would be really fun, since we're still a small channel, to take somebody's individual creative struggle from the comment section and see if we can work through it. So, I want to bring up a comment from Otto Shurin. Hi, Otto. Otto says, very interesting, your perspective, Kate. Congratulations on integrating methods for managing creativity. Thank you. I'm very much there in that same mode, stuck on how to export my ideas. I think I feel overwhelmed by many tasks that must be done every day that don't allow you to listen to yourself or allow an idea to mature into a tangible project. I thought this was so, this is a problem that on some level we all have, because we live in a culture that doesn't pair survival with creativity. So often we feel like we're having to choose between the two. And I've seen this on all levels of creators, from people who are running huge television shows who also feel like they have a passion project that they can't get to because they're in contract with running these shows, to smaller creatives who feel like they have to have a day job instead of pursuing their passion. So this is a really universal problem. I would love to bring some perspective to this. I don't know what we'll find, but one of the main missions of this channel is to bring nuanced perspective to common problems. So, Otto, thank you for giving us this adventure today. Let's see what we get. Otto! Otto! um, the answer to this is really specific, but we're going on a little journey to get to the answer. So let me start at the beginning so we're all clear what everything represents. Okay, so the first image that showed up was this figure that's almost like somebody doing yoga, but it also looks like a dive. And I was attracted to both aspects of it. Like, it looked like it wanted to go right in the middle, and it was sort of like this person is taking a deep dive. But it's also, he or she is also upside down, so it seemed like the deep dive was like all consuming, like it was going somewhere, fully being consumed with its head in the sand, upside down, disoriented, but like it's on, like deep dive. And then the next figure that came out was this little owl, which was towards the background. And between the two figures, it became clear that this was two aspects of self. So this was the self that is on earth trying to do stuff, and then the owl part was the witness, like almost like the soul witnessing the human go through life. And it was two aspects of the same self. And the next thing that appeared was this ring that divided the two. So it was almost like a portal. It's like if we're a soul and we enter the earth through the birth portal, really. But even like, energetically or spiritually, like we go into this earth plane from wherever we were before, which was just pure soul or pure spirit before we came into a human form. This would be like the portal of entry. So it was sort of like the self was entering this earth plane in a human form, and then the soul itself was just outside that portal watching. And it couldn't interfere. Like, they were very much in two separate places. It was like two perspectives of the same self, and one could go where the other couldn't. And so there was a divide between them, but they were very much in communication, and the soul was witnessing the human part diving in head first, which is exactly what it feels like to, come to earth, right? You're like, what is this? What is this? Um, this doesn't feel like what I felt like as a soul. Like, what is happening here? So that was sort of the feeling of it. And it started to become clear that, like, these two perspectives they were so different. Like, and there started, they started to have a conversation with each other. So, um, and actually, I picked up this symbol, which is a sketch of somebody holding a cell phone. It's kind of like a very rough sketch. I don't know, it makes me laugh. It's kind of cartoonish, but that wanted to go right at the perimeter of this portal. So it was almost like being on the cell phone with your own soul and being like, look, man, I know we had plans before we came here, but this is not what I expected. It's very difficult. It's hellfire down here. Everyone's having a really hard time. My work environment is toxic. I can't do the things that we were planning on doing in this lifetime. Like, it's super hard. And the soul is just like witnessing the owl, like, but the owl's not there. The owl's not like having this human experience. So all it can do is like witness very compassionately and just sort of observe everything. But it's the human part that's doing all the labor and going through the struggle in this version. And it was so funny. This conversation kept going. It was mostly the human talking to the soul. The soul was actually not saying anything. It was just like very quietly observing. But the soul was like, I mean, the human was like, I mean, I have this project. I'm trying to get it done. It's impossible. Like on Earth, you got to like pay bills. You got to like earn your food. You got to earn your food. So that's just basic. I mean, if I don't earn my food, I can't even do anything else extraneous, like create my soul intention. Like it's just primal, of course, always comes first because I have to survive first to even be able to be here. And so this human was very distraught, like almost like, and the soul wasn't saying anything. It was so funny. The human was just like, look, man, it's really hard, okay? um, so that went on for a while. And I found myself like really advocating for Otto. I was like, there was this other conversation with me and the Sandplay, and I was like, look, Sandplay, please do not give us some bullshit answer about like how the answer to fulfilling your inspiration here is, just having faith or something like that. Like, we want real answers. We want real answers in a human way about how to solve this crisis about survival versus creativity. Like, please don't shortchange Otto here because we are all Otto. We need answers. Okay, so as soon as I was like, please just tell me the truth, this archetype of a crone came in. So this is a picture of a crone. And the crone to me, when I was first exploring the aspect of a archetype of a crone, the crone is like a woman who has seen it all from the joy to the despair. Like, she embraces the entire spectrum of human experience from dark to light, and she's a master at it. Like, she's very facile. Nothing offends her, nothing surprises her. Like, she has seen it all. She knows the full spectrum of human capability. And so this crone came forward, and it felt like, and she sort of planted herself inside the human portal as almost an advisor, as almost a truth teller. It was like, I'm the crone. I'm here to, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm not going to like sugarcoat anything for you. I'm going to tell you the truth. And I was like, good. So she started this fire ring. Okay, this is where I need to slow down so I can make sure I get this right. She was, from her emerged this fire that went all the way around this human. And it was sort of speaking to like being in the hellfire of Earth, like how hard that is. And just, on some level, it's just like a long burn here. If we're comparing it to a soul perspective where, or, or if there's like another part of ourselves that aren't on Earth, where if you had a thought, that thought would be instantly manifested without any hindrance or resistance or conflict. Whereas on Earth, if you have a thought, you have to go through hellfire to even like conceive of it coming forward, because there's so many factors at play. So she was saying like, listen, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of Earth. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why? Why does it have to be so hard? Why would we feel like we have to choose between survival and creativity? And she said, because creation is trying to understand itself. And if you're in a realm, a hypothetical realm, where you have a thought, and that thought is, you have an inspiration, and that inspiration just manifests immediately, let's say, that's not creative, because the thought itself is already that version of the creation. Like, from a soul perspective, where there's nothing physical, let's say it's just like all energetic. If you have a thought, that's already manifested as itself. Like, it's already in creation. So it's not, it's like, creation is new all the time. It's nuanced. It's something that hasn't been done before. It's the opposite of redundant or repetition. So to have a thought and then bring it into physical form in exactly the way that you're thinking of is redundant. And so the whole point is to have a thought, consider the thought as already its own creative, complete entity. And then you want to put it through the fire of resistance, put it through the fire of earth, of hardship, and sort of let it burn and see what happens to it. Because everything that happens to it along that route is a new creation. So it's almost saying, like, the nature of creativity is so nuanced at every single turn that we have to be like present to that process. And also, what she was saying was, like, the cool thing about Earth, or the entire point of Earth, is how much creation you can make off of one inspiration. It's like exponential because there is so much hardship. So, like, it's not a one-to-one. Like, if you have an inspiration in your head and you make it a form, and those two things are identical, that's like not very creative. The creation hasn't traveled very far. But if you take a creation and you put it in a situation where that creation is impossible to find form, then that inspiration, that initial thought, is going to push through that resistance, almost like a seed pushing through soil to become a flower. And the pushing creates new forms as it goes. So it's creative at every moment. Your initial inspiration is changing, is reforming itself based on what it has to go through to fully manifest. So it is like on the edge of evolution at every minute. And this is what makes the earth so exciting, is because there is so much resistance. And so at every second there is possibility for new creations all the time based on just one inspiration. So I was like, wow, okay. But then I started to get really defensive of Otto, but I'm like, what about Otto? Like, he has this project and then he can't do it. He has all these things during the day that he needs to do. He can't get to his project. Like, you got to come through for Otto. So I was sort of like, what's the solution? How does he navigate having this inspiration and feeling like he's having so much trouble manifesting it? So this other image came through, which is this, it looks like a daughter and sharing something with her father. So it's like two people in a sharing relationship. And it also went inside this human portal. So it was sort of like a tool or an aspect of the human experience set inside this portal. And okay, I got to slow down again too, so I get this. This is like so deep. So the message was talking about two things. One, sharing your inspiration, basically coming out of isolation and coming out of an ego perspective of, I have an inspiration, therefore I have to manifest it by myself. That was number one. That was very important. So this sharing part was sort of saying like, just because you are, channeling this inspiration because you have an idea in your head about something that feels like it wants to come forward in a form, it doesn't mean you alone are responsible for that. And it's really tricky territory because, on some level, of course, we're all sharing our inspirations with each other all the time. And I mean, not only that, but we're always trying, it's very common to try to get somebody like on your project to help you with your stuff. And like, hey, I have this great idea. Like, do you want to do this with me? And it always, like, not always, but a lot of times that falls flat because other people have their own inspirations that they're following and they're busy. So it was this very subtle shift in that idea, which is consider that your idea is coming forward, and that just because you feel like a singular vessel for it doesn't mean that the manifestation of it has to be all through you. And to kind of submit the ego to that belief. So, and I know that it's so tricky because if you're like, oh, but I'm the visionary, I'm the one that can see it, I'm the one feeling it, no one else is feeling it. So I feel like I'm the carrier for that vision. But this was saying, like, relax. Yes, you're a vessel for that particular aspect of that inspiration, but you're missing a major component of creativity on earth in this, with all this resistance, which is connection with others. And definitely that's cultural, right? Like, definitely we're in a society that's like, I'm gonna, it's like we all work on a pyramid. Like, I want to be the one on top, and I have this idea, and I'm going to be the leader going forward. But this was saying like that mentality has erased an entire network of connectivity between us, and we have sort of lost how to communicate our ideas in a non-egoic way so that other people can hear them in a non-egoic way so that we can connect our inspirations to each other. And so this is like the idea of like sharing your idea, but in a non-egoic way that would stimulate another person's non-egoic aspect so that they could find their own inspiration inside what you're talking about. And perhaps there would be a collaborative or not even collaborative, connected effort to bring forward the idea in a new form with combined inspiration. So it's really like dismantling the isolation model for creativity and bringing up something very nuanced and connected. That was the main thing. And the sharing of it was important, but it's like sharing of it from an ego perspective is just, it's not going to work. Everyone's busy. No one's going to want to jump in. It's not really going to work. You've got to like fine tune the egoic structures within you in order to even share that. Which brings me to the next image, which was this net. So this net appeared, and it was in the context of this father-daughter figure sharing. And the net is on the other side of that portal. So the net is sort of in this ethereal space where the soul resides, that same realm. And I was drawn to the cross sections of the net, and it was sort of like at each cross section, there's an owl. Like, those dots of all those points meeting are souls. And so everybody sort of has this seat on this connected net that goes for eternity. It's just like this infinite net. And there's an inherent connection between us all the time. And this was sort of saying like, look to the net, because if you can understand how you're connected to other souls who might be or other people who have souls who are also interested in what you're doing or inspired to do what you're doing, even if it doesn't seem like related to your project, it might be related on a soul level, and then you can work with that. And this was, so it was sort of like, it was sort of turning my attention toward acknowledge the connectivity between all of us. And the reason that's important is because if you're someone with a big idea and your life or your day job or whatever will not let you bring in that manifestation, there's too much resistance, there's too much going on. I mean, it's almost like the idea is too big for the tiny hole that you're providing for it to come through and be birthed into this world. Then what you need to do is understand and acknowledge that you're connected to a net. And in that net, there is so much more potential for ideas to come through. There's so much more room. There's less resistance because maybe you have this, overwhelming task list or day job or whatever it is, but somebody else might not, or combined, you might find a lot of time and space to bring things through. So it was sort of like expand your understanding of how it's supposed to come through just through you, and understand how we're connected so that you can broaden the portal, so to speak, for your inspiration to come through. And what was really interesting about this was it brought up the idea of form. So when we have an inspiration, the inspiration for it, the idea for it is different than the form that it will take. So the inspiration was coming from this owl, right? This owl was sort of like, I have a feeling, I have something that my soul wants to bring forward. It would feel so good if this, story could be told, if this painting could be made, whatever it is, this music could be written, because something in my soul is like aching to be defined, to be defined. And what happens is, this is so interesting. I think it's so true. And this is sort of the key to the entire solution. Otto, pay attention. This is it. What happens when we come to Earth is that we start to notice about what our options are for form. So if you're bringing something forward artistic, you've got, it could be a play, it could be a painting. There's certain forms, there's genres, formats, we've categorized them all. There's cultural agreements about how things can be brought forward, and they're specific and they're limited. They're finite. And so what's happening to Otto, or all of us, is we're having an inspiration that has no form, and we're looking around at the available forms, and we're drawn to one or the other, and we're like, okay, we're going to make a match. I'm going to take this inspiration and I'm going to take this form that is commonly understood and available, and I'm going to put the inspiration in that form, and it's going to be a thing. But what has happened to us in our culture is that all of the forms have gatekeepers. So there's certain ways that form is made, and there's certain budgets that you need to make those other things. And there's rules, and there's people, and there's, agents, and there's industries built around this gatekeeping of how to get into the form. And so a lot of the dilemma is, and even if it's not industries, even like having a cultural value of survival, or that's not a cultural value, that's an actual value, needing to survive, but having a culture that would make you pay for food and pay for, everything before you can even start thinking about doing anything else. That in a way is a gatekeeping, because you have to fulfill a certain requirements culturally to support yourself in order to even start thinking creatively. So that is also a form of gatekeeping. So what's happening is, like, people are getting caught between, I have this inspiration, but all the forms have impossible gates on them. And then the whole trajectory of an artist becomes, how can I break down the gates? How can I get through the gates of these pre-designated forms? And that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, all of our energy sometimes. So what this was saying was, be flexible on the form. Be flexible on the form. And this is like the reverse of how a lot of, how we usually think about manifestation, because we're like, oh, I have this inspiration, but it has to be one of these forms because those are the forms that are available. And this was, and so sometimes the inspiration, is compromised because you're like, oh, I can't get past the gatekeeper unless that gatekeeper makes me change my inspiration. So I have to like dim it down or convolute it in order to pigeonhole it into this form that is gate kept by all these people. So in that way, we allow our inspiration to be flexible, and we allow the form to be rigid. That's how we normally do it. And what this was saying was the opposite. Allow the inspiration to stay true and be flexible on the form that it could take. Be flexible on the form that it could take. And it was sort of saying like, so I almost put this in, but I didn't. This is a wave. And it was sort of pointing to like, any form that we make is finite. Like the form is not the important part. The form is a vessel that the inspiration would take so that when, like if you're manifesting something, it's kind of like a wave, you go like up like a wave. And then when it crests, that's like the peak definition of your inspiration in physical form. So, and that feels so good, right? Like when you had an inspiration and you're like, I manifested it and it met the exact resonance of the inspiration that I had inside. And I'm having this like joyful experience of what I'm seeing outside matches what I envisioned inside. And it is like, nothing's better. Like your soul can rest once that happens. But after that happens, the wave crashes, like the whole form dissolves. I mean, every single thing here that's alive on earth will die. All of it is finite. And yet this is what we're attached to. This is what we are banking on to fulfill our inspiration. So this was saying like, instead of banking on something that's finite, bank on the infinite thing, the eternal thing, the actual initial inspiration, and consider that maybe the form that you're imagining it coming through is not the form that it's going to come through in. And it could, it might be as simple as like, maybe it's not a play, maybe it's something else that's available, but it seemed to be very connected with that net, in that it's sort of like if you're true to your inspiration and you let your ego burn enough to communicate it in an authentic way, and you're listening to people that you're communicating with and understanding where their inspiration is, and you're drawing the dots between your inspiration and their inspiration, and you're seeing how the two of you are connected, then that connectivity in that net, it's almost like be open to what form that connection wants to express itself as, because there are so many more forms available to you if you are imaginative about how it could manifest, is what this was saying. So instead of being like, I want to make a blockbuster movie, if you start with a connection and start with a conversation about somebody who has an inspiration, and then you start to build the net for yourself, and the entire net is inspired, eventually that is going to have so many points of it that are connected that it is going to reveal itself as a form, and that form might surprise you. So the overall message to this is be flexible on what you think the form is from your inspiration, and be true to your inspiration. Don't let it, don't compromise it. And the last image that came up was this pufferfish, I think bufferfish, blowfish, this very surprising fish. I have this fish and it's like, it's got spikes on it. I think it's a blowfish. I think this is the one that's poisonous inside. Anyway, it's a very surprising fish. It's like, oh, that's a fish. And it was, so the symbol of it was sort of like the surprise of a form that is, I mean, I think this fish is hilarious. So like, I would never pick this fish as like my ultimate, like I would never start an inspiration and be like, oh, it's probably going to look like a pufferfish or whatever. But if it did, and it brought through my inspiration, and my soul felt that click of like, oh, okay, yes, this got expressed through this form, then great, because creation is a surprise because it hasn't been created before. So it's like even this form, in this case, the form itself came out as a surprise, as a shock. And that is like the initial, that's the like underlying nature of creativity itself, is it's always trying to understand itself and surprise itself and be something new. So it's like relax your relax your ideas around the form. Maybe your inspiration is coming through as a pufferfish. Be open and go on the ride of having it push through all the resistance of your life. Because if you have this job or whatever it is that's preventing you from making your passion project, maybe you have 5 minutes to connect with somebody else in that web in an authentic way that would ignite that inspiration. And it would only cost you 5 minutes, but it would be enough to start forging those connections. So you don't have to quit your day job. You don't have to do anything else. You find the spaces in your life that are available for authentic connection. Go to that web, start to understand it, feel it out, you know, consider that your inspiration is coming through in a way that you weren't aware of, that you didn't visualize, and then be surprised at the form that pops out. That's the answer. Okay, I think I got it all. You guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Otto, good luck. I'm totally behind you. Let us know in the comments if this worked for you. And anybody else, you guys, I'm up for a challenge. So if you want to share your creative dilemma, put it in the comments. Maybe we'll do a Sandplay for you. I'm totally in. I'm totally in. Okay, until next time. Bye.